Hi friends, I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a list of fiction audiobook recommendations. So I've already posted my non-fiction audiobook recommendation video, and this is the follow-up with some fiction recommendations. So I hope that you enjoy this and get some good recommendations from it. I have roughly 9 or 10 books to talk to you about today, so I won't hang about and do a very long intro. But yeah, I do find audiobooks really relaxing to listen to. I really enjoy listening to audiobooks, and I'm really excited to share this list with you and hopefully get some recommendations from you as well, because I do really enjoy audiobooks in particular as a format. But the first book on this list is Queenie by Candice Carty Williams. Really enjoyed this. Love Queenie. I know people say that Queenie's a little bit like Marmite, but I just don't really get that, because I just really loved Queenie as a character and really enjoyed following her story and her group of friends, and kind of exploring your kind of early 20s together with Queenie. It was such a nice audiobook experience as well. There's like mixed media in the book, and I love that you kind of get that, kind of brings it to life, the audiobook experience. Like there's text messages between the friends, and you feel like you're part of the group chats and stuff. Really enjoyable. At times really light and funny, and like really has a kind of real kind of energy about it, and other times darker, sadder. Queenie goes through quite a lot of things, and we kind of go with her through those things, and I guess you're kind of experiencing all those emotions alongside her. So definitely one that I recommend, and I particularly enjoyed the audiobook of this one. The next book is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. I hope I've said that right, but I fear that I might not have, and do apologise. This is a really good kind of, it's like a domestic thriller, like a literary domestic thriller. It kind of sits somewhere in there, and I read it about 4 years ago. Really enjoyed it, but the details are a little bit hazy, so bear with me. But I know this is about a male and female couple, and they're following their relationship really. And as I say, it's kind of like a domestic thriller, and it's like really gripping read. It's really fast paced and like really engaging and like twisty and quite dark. Some of the themes are quite dark, but just such a good read, such a brilliantly written story. And I remember being so immersed in it, like I didn't want to put this audiobook down. It was one of my first kind of audiobooks that I listened to, and my first experience of really being like I really want to listen on and really find out where this goes. So yeah, I really highly would recommend that one. It was brilliant, and I absolutely loved it. Next up I have Love in Colour by Bolu Babalola. This is a collection of mythical tales retold and reimagined for the modern day. It's very interesting, beautifully told collection. I was also narrated by the author themselves. Really enjoyed listening to it. I thought it was really interesting the way that she kind of spins different tales to be kind of modern, and a lot of them I didn't recognise. I don't know my kind of myths very well, but I still really enjoyed the kind of stories in themselves that Bolu Babalola decided to tell. And yeah, I love that they were kind of short stories. You kind of listen to them on a walk, or just if you were doing a short task without the kind of I guess the commitment of a long audiobook, so it's good for that kind of thing as well. But I really like that one and would really recommend it. The next one is one that I read quite recently. It's Symona Still Single by Alyssa Bent. This is one of the Jacaranda 20 and 2020 titles. Really enjoyed this one. It's kind of a non-traditional romance. We follow Symona as she's on this kind of journey of self-discovery. She's, I think, 37. She's Jamaican British, and she lives in London, and she wants to have a child, and she wants to meet a kind of life partner, and she's sort of searching for that person, and it's kind of following her journey as she kind of goes on. And I felt really emotionally connected to her. I felt like we were really involved in her, and we kind of follow her. It's more of kind of a journey of self-discovery, rather than a lot of romances are kind of about those two people in relation to each other and their identities interlinked, where this is more about Symona and like her as an individual and her lived experience. And yeah, I thought it was really beautiful. It also kind of explores kind of trauma and the impact of that on our relationships, and also just all these people that she meets. Where does she find some of these people? So kind of interesting runs in with different kinds of people, and yeah, just there was lots of different twists and turns. I never really knew what was going to happen next with this woman. But it was definitely a really enjoyable read, and I would highly, highly recommend it. I also want to recommend on audiobook A Kind of Spark by Elle McNicholl. At the time of filming, this is part of Audible Plus, which is included in all Audible members' catalogue, and it basically means that you get access to this additional catalogue of audiobooks which are free of charge in your membership, which is a new thing that Audible has done, and A Kind of Spark is in that. So if you have Audible already, you can access it that way. I really, really love this. We follow Addie, who is a young autistic girl, and she's at school, and she learns about the witch trials in Scotland through a lesson at school, and she becomes quite interested in this, and she kind of feels the injustice quite strongly about what these women experienced, and she wants to erect a memorial place, a memorial kind of monument of some kind to kind of commemorate their losses, and also she wants to see Edinburgh City Council take responsibility for what happened, and she wants to see a kind of apology being made to these women, because I think one of the reasons she feels it so deeply is that she sees in these women that they just don't fit the mould of society, and that's the reason that they were killed. And she sees herself as an autistic person as somebody who doesn't fit that mould, and so she takes it personally in a sense. But her feelings are all completely valid. There should be more of a conversation about what happened in the witch trials and the way these women were treated, and the historic treatment of women in societies. There's a lot of kind of conversations that should be going on there. But I just really loved Addie. I thought she was lovely. She also has an older sister who is also autistic, and they have a very special relationship, and I loved watching that as well. It's just a really nicely told audiobook as well. I don't know who narrates it, but it's really nicely narrated, and yeah, it's just a lovely story. So I would definitely recommend that one. I've got Show Us Who You Are on my TBR to read, and I'm looking forward to that even more now I've read A Kind of Spark. The next book I want to recommend is The Deep by River Solomon. This is a kind of Afrofuturist imagining of what happened to the women who were pregnant on slave ships, who at that period of time were thrown overboard the slave ships. And River Solomon imagines a underwater world where these women had their babies and created a society, and those people live on in the ocean, and very beautifully told. It's a really difficult read, but it's very beautiful is really the only thing I can think to say about it. It's very moving. It's about trauma and how trauma is passed on from generation to generation, how it's held by different people. We follow a central character who's responsible for holding the trauma and the kind of burden that places upon them. And there's also sort of little meanderings of conversations into like gender and different things, which I thought were really interesting as well, the way they were kind of weaved in. It's just a novella, it's quite short as an audiobook, but it was really moving, and it's left a real lasting impression on me as a book. I'd like to read it again in physical format, but I thought the audiobook was really, really nice and nicely narrated and everything like that, so would recommend that for a fiction audiobook recommendation. Also something a little bit different from this, for the rest of the titles on this list, When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is it's billed as a thriller, and it is in many ways a thriller, but there's also a kind of romance theme through it. There's a romance plot, and we get two perspectives, and each perspective has their own narrator, which I really like, because I struggle when there's two points of view but only one narrator, because I'm like, whose point of view are we on? Who's speaking? Who am I with just now? Whereas this was really quite clear in that sense, which is really good. It's also quite kind of racy in the sense of like fast-paced is what I mean, fast-paced, and kind of really gets your kind of heart rate up. You're like kind of on the edge of your seat waiting to find out what happens in the book. It's, as a plot, it's set around gentrification in America, and it's about kind of the gentrification of certain areas and what happens to Black people in particular who live in these areas, and it talks about that. I don't want to give too much away. You've probably heard quite a lot about this book already, but just thought I would mention it as an audiobook recommendation, because I think the audiobook is really, really nice and really kind of underrated. I hear a lot of people talk about reading the physical book and everything, but I think the audiobook was a really unique and enjoyable experience and would recommend that. The next on this list is actually kind of technically two. It's basically a general recommendation for Angie Thomas's books. I really enjoy Angie Thomas's books and I particularly like them on audiobook. I just recently bought myself Concrete Rose because I couldn't find I kind of have more access to like the UK book market, and I couldn't find Concrete Rose in the UK audiobook market, and so I in the end decided to buy myself a physical copy. But I really enjoyed both The Hate You Give and On the Come Up as audiobooks and would really recommend them. I just think they're brilliant stories and really engaging stories, really interesting young people who lead interesting lives, and yeah, I think they're worth reading generally speaking. But as audiobooks, they kind of bring themselves to life. Both The Hate You Give and On the Come Up feature young women protagonists, and it's kind of about their kind of growing up, coming of age, and also the kind of external things that are going on in their life and kind of coping with those. You've probably heard a lot about both of them, and yeah, they're kind of hyped, but for me it's like it's a YA that I see why it's hyped, and I think it's quite deserving of that hype. So yeah, I would recommend them, and particularly as audiobooks. And finally, a book that I listened to via my library in Edinburgh when I used to go into my library and take out CDs of audiobooks, which I'm not sure that my current library does that, but my library in Edinburgh, that was one of the ways I used to listen to audiobooks, and I would stick them in the car and listen to them. And one of those that I read that way was Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and so beautiful, that story, just incredible, this kind of sweeping family saga set in Japan and set around the Pachinko parlours, and you just follow these people, this family, as they kind of different generations grow up and live on, and we follow all of their experiences. So much to the book, and I think it was just really nice via audio. I remember really enjoying it, and like I had a really long commute at the time, so I remember like looking forward to my commute so I could plug into this and listen to it. I really, really loved it. It's a really beautiful story, and it was a 5-star read for me, and it's one that I think about revisiting in physical form or revisiting in some way at some point, because I feel like there's so much to it that maybe in the kind of commute, maybe I missed the details on, and I think if I had more time to sit with the words and sit with the story, there may be more that I take from it than I did the first time. I think it's one that when you revisit it, you might get more from, you might get even more, but I loved it the first time around, so I would really highly recommend that one. But that's everything for this video of fiction audiobook recommendations. Let me know if you have read any of these, what you thought of them, if you liked them as much as I did, if you got on with the narration like I did. Also, please let me know if you have any recommendations for audiobooks. I am always looking for audiobook recommendations. I'm quite fussy with narrators, I'm quite fussy with who narrates it, but I love that you can kind of sample an audiobook and see if you're going to get on with the narration before you buy it or before you dive in if you're on your library like Libby app, which is what I have. So yeah, I love that you can do that and kind of get a wee taste for what the narration will be like. But yeah, drop a comment down below if you also enjoy audiobooks, if you've read any good ones recently. I would love to hear your recommendations and talk to you in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video.